Action.
Okay. Drop that. Yeah. Feel the funk, y'all. Yeah. Feel the funk, y'all. Yeah. Lay back in the cut.
Hey guys, this video is about our first short film, The Betrayal, we recently shot in Las Vegas. My name's Damien Cooper and this is Monkey Pixels. So if you haven't watched The Betrayal, link is in the description below. Watch it before you watch the making of, otherwise you will get spoiled.
We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
So we at Monkey Pixels, we usually do a lot of commercial work, including music videos, corporate and commercials. We've never done a short film before, even though we wanted to do one for a while now. So while in Vegas, we were there to shoot some music videos, we had a little bit of downtime and decided to take the time to shoot one or even two short films while we were there. The first short film we shot hasn't really aired yet and it hasn't even been edited yet. So while we're still there and had a little bit of time, we decided to just start another one. So we wrote this screenplay originally intended for a friend of mine because he's really into Taco Bell, and our other friend he's roommates with, he really doesn't want him to eat Taco Bell, so that's kind of the idea of The Betrayal. So we wanted him to act, but he didn't really have the time while we were there, so we went online and found this awesome actor Travis who did a really great job and committed to the short film on 2 days notice. So this short film came to life pretty quickly and spontaneously. I wrote the screenplay in half a day, and since it was intended for our friend who couldn't make it in the end, we didn't spend a lot of time on preparation for anything like cast or location or even getting a car. So once we found out that we can't shoot it with our friend, we needed to find a replacement actor. So I went online and Travis agreed to do it on really short notice.
Shut up!
Without really having been briefed. So I sent him the screenplay, he liked it, and he agreed to shoot the very next day because we were leaving the country the day after. So we didn't really have a lot of time and we didn't even have a car. He carpooled to Vegas from LA, so he didn't have a car either. So we went online, we rented a car on really short notice that had the right trunk for our scene because we wanted to have this ominous light kind of scene to kind of trick the viewer into believing it's like something bad happened, then like making it work with a plot twist in the end. So we met with Trevor at a diner 1 hour before starting to shoot the whole thing. So we didn't really have a lot of time to talk about the script, but he managed to pull it off exactly the way I wanted it to be.
You can do this. You can do this.
So I just gave him rough directions what's going on in his character, but I didn't really give him specific directions on what to do, and he just freelanced, winged it, and he really did a great job.
You want a sense of like maybe he's panicking, maybe he's kind of just losing it now?
Exactly, like
Okay.
you have this inner fight where you're contemplating whatever is in the trunk, you're gonna open the trunk sooner or not, like there's a regret, but then, you know, that kind of situation.
Come on! Come on! Come on! Come on!
Especially the scene where he was just breaking down in despair. I really liked that scene, for example, and he did an awesome job of conveying the message that I wanted to tell in the story. So, although I really scripted it the way I wanted it to have, there were certain things on set that came really spontaneously and he just went with it. For example, the scene where the alarm went off.
Shut up!
He accidentally pressed a button on the remote of the car and just went with it, screamed at the car. I really liked that one. So he did an awesome job of just improvising, giving the short notice of me giving him the script. So as for the location, I literally just went on Google Maps and was looking for a road that was really remote, that we had a lot of time without being interrupted, and getting the whole feel of him being lonely and driving away from something because he really wants to get away from whatever is troubling him. So we found this road called Prison Road in Nevada, and that worked out perfectly for our shoot. So since we didn't really plan to shoot a short film in Vegas, we didn't really bring all of our A gear. The gear we brought were really tailored specifically to the jobs we were there to shoot, which were 2 music videos, which we shot in addition with a friend of ours, so we wanted to use his equipment, his Ronin for example, and his audio equipment. So we were also there to shoot a commercial, and for the interview part, we only brought a lavalier mic. But a lavalier mic in that situation doesn't really fit our short film needs because we want to have a little bit of atmosphere as well as all the other surrounding sounds. So the gear we ended up using for the Betrayal were naturally our C200, which we use for most of our videos anyway. Since I mentioned we didn't really bring our big stabilizer, we went with the Xeon Crane 2 for all that, which turned out to be a really good decision because it was so shaky driving at high speed in the car that we couldn't really use the Ronin anyway. Being able to pull that off with the C200 on a handheld gimbal was a really great thing because then we could get really stabilized footage in a really condensed space, which turned out really perfectly. As for the audio equipment, the problem was we brought our Zoom H5 recorder, but for some reason it didn't recognize our SD cards, which never happened before. So plan B would have been, which we usually do while being on the gimbal, to use a shotgun mic attached to the gimbal. But we didn't really have a long enough cable, so we couldn't do that either. So, since we couldn't record audio while shooting on the gimbal, we were left with no sound for half of our movie. So what we had to do is reproduce everything in post. So, as I mentioned earlier, we weren't able to record audio while filming on the gimbal. So what we need to do now is to create sounds and sound effects in post. So since we have a really big library of awesome sound effects, underscores, hits, and all that good stuff, we were pretty much able to recreate all these sounds in post for the car engine, the wind noises, the in-car atmosphere, even the trunk opening. We found a pretty good sound effects in our library. But which we don't have is the scene where he bites into the burger, because this one is really specific and really hard to recreate with just generic sound effects. So what we need to do now is we need to recreate the sound effects of him biting into the burger by ourselves. It's not even that bad. So for all the handheld shots, we just attached the shotgun microphone directly to the C200 and recorded the audio right there, which isn't really the best thing to do, but since we didn't really have a boom mic on set, it worked out pretty well. There were also some funny things in editing where we had this wide shot of him getting out of the car as well as the medium shot, and in the medium shot he was cursing and I just overlapped the audio, which fit perfectly to the scene, even though in the wide shot that we actually ended up displaying in the movie he wasn't even saying anything, but it fit perfectly to whatever he was doing with his lips in that particular moment, so we could use the audio overlapping from one shot.
Shut up! Fuck! Ah! Come on!
Overlapping to the other.
Shut up! Fuck!
So as for lighting, we brought our Westcott travel kit, which we bring everywhere, since this is really the perfect travel light. It's really flexible, you can put it in really small places like the trunk or inside of the car without having it to be in the way. It's really bright, it's bi-colored, this is not a sponsored video, and this is the lighting kit we bring for everything. We also usually bring a lot of gels so we can really experiment with different kinds of lighting, blue, red, green, or in this case, we used the yellow one to get this ominous look we wanted to have in the trunk. Since the Westcott travel light comes with batteries that power these things for about 3 hours, we were able to just fit them inside the trunk without any cables or external power needed, and had all the power we needed to shoot throughout the day. The day scenes we didn't light at all. We didn't use any external lights or even reflectors for that matter, because we also had this really soft light coming through the windows, so we didn't really need to light anything inside the car. And we were shooting around golden hour, which was always the plan for the scene where he's getting out of the car, so we didn't really need any external lighting or reflectors anyway. As for the night scenes, it was really getting dark really quickly, so it was pitch black at one point, so we definitely did have to use external lighting. So for when he was sitting in the car and making the decision to get out of it and actually biting into the burger,
Alright.
we used one of our FlexCard lightings with a purplish bluish gel attached to it in the back seat to mimic a little bit of moonlight and gave the whole scene a little bit of color contrast. So the trunk scene where he's opening the trunk is obviously a yellow gel which we just attached to the Westcott lighting, just laying flat in the trunk, which worked out pretty nicely. We didn't really have to power it because we had the batteries, and when he was opening the trunk, we had this ominous, really yellow, mysterious light coming out of the trunk that lit him completely. The only thing we were a little worried about was the scene where he's getting out of the car, where we had the mid to wide shot, because without any external lighting, that just looked horrible because you couldn't see anything at all. So we had Belle standing offside to the left of the car and just shine it towards the car. So in the beginning, we wanted to kind of mimic a street light with a warm light. But then again, we had this road already panned out in the beginning, and you could see there weren't any street lights. So really having a warm tone didn't really work for us. So we dialed it to daylight and kind of tried to mimic the moon again. And since we were coming from the left side, it also looked a little like his headlights were on and giving us this little bit of light. So yeah, I'm trying to shoot a time-lapse here to simulate the passing of time, but I've never used this camera before. It's a 6D Mark II, which should be pretty perfect for that kind of situation, but it should have a time-lapse feature, but I can't find it. So as for the shot where we shot the time-lapse, we usually shoot time-lapses mostly with our 5D Mark IV, which we didn't bring to the States. So what we had to do is to use Belle's Canon 6D Mark II, but I haven't really used this camera before, so I couldn't figure out how to use the time-lapse. I was a little disappointed since it didn't really have an intervalometer, at least I couldn't find one. So we had to use the time-lapse to movie feature, which isn't as great because you can't set the specifics, shutter speed, aperture for every shot you want to have. It only works in automatic, I think. If I'm mistaken, please let me know in the comments below. But in the end, it worked out nicely. The thing is, I set up the 6D Mark II the wrong way, so it only shot for a couple minutes. Interestingly enough, I wasn't sure how much it was going to shoot, so I asked her if she could check on the camera, and right when I said that, it was literally the last frame taken, so we could just go ahead and just restart the whole thing and didn't really miss a lot. Time-lapse went off since we never used this before. And now we need to just turn it back on, but we were like literally, there were only 3 more shots, and we came here because I was telling Belle to check on it, and she came here right for the last 4 shots. So as for the music, we really wanted to have this suspense building music that is almost up to a point to be a little bit annoying, but if we would have really shot a scene where we wanted to naturally build suspense that was actually leading to a terrifying moment, then we probably wouldn't have gone overboard like that. But since we really wanted to build it up and then have it to cut right where the plot twist came, we wanted to go a little overboard here. So usually we probably would have brought a shoulder rig for all the non-gimbal shots where I wanted to have it a little bit shaky because the character was really struggling. So having everything really smooth and panning out nicely wouldn't really have fit the scene and the emotion I wanted to convey. So I usually would have wanted to have it on the shoulder, but since I didn't really have to cover that much ground and I didn't bring a shoulder rig, I just used the C200 handheld. And because of the really small ergonomics and the really awesome hand grip, the C200 works very well with just being handheld. So it gives you a little bit of this disturbing shake you wanted to have and to have the whole thing feel natural, but then it isn't really that shaky and you can actually walk around with it pretty easily on a 50mm or 24mm, which were the lenses we used to shoot the whole thing anyway. So for all the tech nerds out there, we shot the whole thing in RAW, which we usually do, and since everything was well scripted, we didn't really have to shoot a lot of takes, so we ended up with about roughly 250 gigabytes of storage afterwards, which isn't even bad at all. As we usually do as of recently, we edited the whole thing in Final Cut, which is a total breeze, although we had a lot of crashes due to the new Cinema Lite RAW codec, which we ran into a couple of problems once in a while. But other than that, it was fairly straightforward because it was scripted, so we knew which shot goes where, and so just cutting the whole thing together, color grading, wasn't really the worst part. The tougher parts were the sound design, because we couldn't really record anything on set, as I've mentioned earlier, but cutting it all together, color grading was a total breeze. Overall, we did make some mistakes we just caught afterwards, obviously, otherwise we would have just changed it on set. One of those being, when we was looking at his phone in the car, it was 4:56 on the display, and then we shot the other scene of the cell phone lying on the passenger seat, we shot it 2 hours later. Funny thing is, we shot it exactly 2 hours later, so it's 4:56 in the first shot and 6:56 in the second shot. I know, it's a really long throw. But then again, since the minutes were exactly the same, which we didn't even notice, I think since only one digit was off, the viewer wouldn't really notice by the first time watching. Plus, to get around that a little bit, I had the text messages display in the bottom right of the screen, so the viewer would be naturally distracted by reading the text message instead of focusing on the screen and seeing that the times didn't match up. So far, nobody has noticed in the comments, and we did a great job, I think. So in the end, we were really pleased with the result of our very first short film. We didn't really know what to expect, but we really liked it, and I hope you guys liked it too. And it got us motivated to shoot some more short films, even more elaborate stuff, with more actors, really castings, more time, maybe even a little bit of more budget. So I hope you guys liked that too, and if you did, please hit the like button, maybe even share it with your friends, and subscribe for upcoming reviews, short films, and other stuff. My name is Damien Cooper, and this is Monkey Pixels.